Once we understand the basics of arrow functions, now let's take a look at the keyword of this and how that is going to change whether it makes sense to use the arrow function in that particular case, or you should rather stick with a regular function instead. And the biggest difference is that when we use the regular function, this is going to refer to a parent, or you can think of a left of dot. So let's say if I have a object by the name of Bob, and then within the Bob, I have a method of say name that is referencing this, and I'm console logging just so we can clearly see. And also, if we're console logging, hello, my name is, and then referencing this first name and then last name, which of course are both properties of Bob. If I'm going to call this, if I'm going to say Bob, say name, I'm going to see in console two things. First, console log this is going to be referencing the Bob. And that's the reason why I also have hello, my name is Bob Smith, because we are correctly referencing the parent or left of the dot. Keep in mind, we have the Bob, and then we have say name, which of course is our function. In the object, it would be a method, and left of dot is Bob. That's the reason why when we call say name, of course, we have our hello, my name is Bob Smith. When we use arrow functions, though, this refers to its current surrounding scope. So if I have the same object, however, I'm just going to call it differently, where I'm going to have Anna, and then say name method is not going to be a regular function. It will be, in fact, an arrow function. You're going to see if we console log this, it is going to reference the window object. Why it's referencing the window object? Because let's think about it. We have Anna, and then we call say name. So what is the surrounding scope? It's a global scope, correct? That's the reason why we're referencing the window. And then, of course, on a window, we don't have this dot first name and this dot last name. So when we try to run say name, so Anna say name, we have hello, my name is undefined and undefined. So that would be the biggest difference. Where again, regular function, this refers to a parent or left of the dot. Or if we use the arrow function, this is always going to refer to a current surrounding scope, which in our case is going to be the global scope. And that's the reason why we're going to access this as our window object and not the properties that we're looking for. Because on a window, we're not going to have these properties. That should be a first clue. Now let's take a look at where arrow functions come in handy. Because in this case scenario, of course, you can see that it is much more useful to use a regular function. However, let's make things interesting. First of all, I'm going to comment out the say name because we can already see how the arrow functions would behave. But let's imagine a different scenario where not only I would want to console log it, but I would want to console log it, I don't know, in 2 seconds. How that would work. I'm going to keep console log this because the value is going to change and that's going to be important. And of course, we can use built-in set timeout function. So I can say set timeout. Remember, we needed to pass a callback function. So we have our callback function. And then within the callback function, of course, we would need to set up our functionality. So I'm going to cut out the previous console log, copy and paste. And then we need to say in how long we would want to call it. Like I said, I'm going to go with 2 seconds. Let's save it. And we can see that first time on console log this, I'm referencing the Bob. But then when I run my function, my callback function, I have hello, my name is undefined, undefined. Why is that? Well, again, let's think about it. So in a regular function, please keep in mind, we have a regular function. This refers to a parent, left of the dot. So what is the parent in this case? Is it the object? Is it the Bob, like we had previously? Or is it the global one, the window object? And of course, the answer is the window object. And we can clearly test that by, again, console logging this from our callback function. And you're going to see that in 2 seconds, we are now referencing the window object. So in this case, arrow functions would come in really handy. Now, technically, we could have solved this the old way, where I could say, all right, so if within the method itself, I'm referencing this, I could just say there's going to be a variable called self, or however you would want to call it. It is going to reference this. And now instead of calling this dot first name and this dot last name, we can just change both of them around. And let me select both of them. Let me type self. And then, of course, we're also going to console log self just so we can see. The first this is going to reference still the window. But if I type here self, then you're going to see we're referencing first Bob, then this is still going to reference the window. But then since we assigned self variable to this from our actual method, we can access, of course, the Bob as well as Smith. And while this works, making our callback function arrow function is going to solve our issues. So I'm going to cut this out, and I'm not going to keep it for your reference. Of course, you can keep it in your code, but then I'm going to delete the self as well here, and we're going to create it as a arrow function. So let's get rid of the function keyword. Then let's set up, of course, our arrow function. And within a console log, we're not going to reference anymore the self. We're going to reference this. And you're going to see how everything works and why everything is working. Well, it's working because the current surrounding scope is what? Well, I'm calling the set timeout with my callback function within my say name, correct? So in this case, I'm referencing the object instead of referencing the parent. I'm just saying, all right, so my surrounding scope is the object, and I'm always going to reference, of course, this, and in this case, the first name and last name, which is going to be Bob Smith. So again, please keep in mind when using regular functions, it's going to reference the parent. So that's the reason why if you're going to be setting this up as a regular method with an arrow function, your this is going to reference the window object or wherever you're going to call it. Of course, there's multiple cases where you can call it within some other object or something like that. But in our case, when we run this, we're referencing, of course, the global scope. However, if you are already within that method, and then if you would want to reference still your object, of course, you can use a arrow function, because arrow function is going to reference its current surrounding scope, which in this case is going to be our object of Bob.